This artist claims that they're legit, that they are an artist, an author, and a voice actor. But a lot of other people feel like something fishy is up. So let's delve into the situation of this artist, A. Laya. And again, don't send hate to any parties involved. So on July 2nd, an account called Bookish Scammer Referral makes a post about this artist, A. Laya, saying offense AI tracing. The red flags include a very young account, incoherent in skills, visible tracing in speed paints, and also offers allegedly AI voice acting. Though this is their page where you can see some of their artwork. Their bio notably says no AI. This is their Instagram where they have a lot of their artwork. And as we can see here, this is one example of their work. And now out the gate, this already looks very AI generated. And I want to add a giant disclaimer, right? Because AI is trained off of actual real human artists. There's going to be a lot of people whose art quote unquote looks AI, and that's because AI was trained off of them. You know, the chicken and the egg, which one came first? The real artist did come first. So that on its own, it looking AI, in my opinion, isn't really the best indicator that something suspicious is going on. But one thing that does make it more suspicious is the artwork looking AI and the artist not having a history of drawing like this prior to generative AI becoming a thing. Because artists whose work looks very in the style of AI, well, because they've been drawing like this for a long time, they have examples of them working in this style way before Stable Diffusion became a thing, which this artist doesn't. Here's another example of the art piece, which once again is giving the very like a generative AI style. Another user's comments, they also use AI voice acting and offer to read your books out loud, but it's just an AI voice. Another person comments saying, oh, I've been following them for a while, but I'm not sure. I know she hired a guy to do some work for the male voices in her work and has been trying to narrate the rest of the books herself, but I don't remember seeing anything about her offering services. There's also this account called Mousy and Goldie, where Laya, or I'm gonna end up calling them Ayla because that's how my brain is reading their name, even though their name is Laya. But anyways, where Ayla and this other male voice actor, aka Goldie, does voice acting together. People after listening to that, some people felt like the voice actor was AI generated. Maybe they're generating a male voice because they couldn't find any credits for the voice actor anywhere. And yes, this person, this Ayla and Goldie duo, they do charge for their voice acting. You know, here are pricing for their voice acting services, more pricing, etc. So a lot of people also felt like the voice actor, the male one, was AI generated. So I talked to the Friendly Neighborhood artist, and they have a channel where they also cover art scams. I'll have a link down below because they actually already covered the story. I recommend you go and check them out because they're very cool. And they actually talked to the male voice actor. They confirmed that he's a real person. And whether he's cited or not, that probably is for personal choices, but just because they weren't cited as a voice actor on the Mousy and Goldie duo channel doesn't mean they don't exist. They do exist actually, and they are real. Now, before we get into other people talking about Ayla's work, let's do a little perusal ourselves, because there are a lot of things I'm seeing that look a bit suspicious. I want to obviously believe the artist and I want to believe they did the work legitimately, but going across their page, there already is a fair amount of red flags to me. So this is the art piece that's used in the profile photo for the Mousy and Goldie page. And as you can see, it's exhibiting this, again, very standard semi-realism art style that you see a lot with the generative AI works, but also you see this with, you know, other people legitimately have this as their art style. There are things that I find a bit interesting with this piece. And again, I just want to add, when it comes to AI, we got to look at all pieces, right? Or multiple art pieces. It's really hard to determine just off of one. One thing that I already find a bit interesting when it comes to looking at this piece is that like there's a really high level of rendering, but also somehow a really shaky level in terms of cutting out shapes for parts of the body, like the zipper here, for instance, or here on the arm, or here for the hands, as if they're using a really hard eraser brush to kind of carve it out. It doesn't fully blend in naturally, where when you look at the rest of the piece as a whole, everything blends in very smoothly, including elements of the hair, the way the hair falls. They do leather really well. This again is something that is a trait of people who paint over generative AI, is that they're really good at drawing leather and clothing, but they will have other elements that are not up to par with their leather and other shiny clothing rendering. And leather and latex is pretty hard to draw. So that together is a bit Interesting. But look at the level of rendering they have for the hair, the leather, etc. Okay, just take a note of that. This is another piece they have. It's a female character with blonde hair and a very long braid kind of swinging around the back in a bit of a different style. And then we have this piece, right, which is a male character kind of tied up around the waist. The arms are tied around the back. He's giving a smirk. Again, look at the rendering style. The style is very in line with the other styles this artist works in. And then we have like a piece like this. And the face is similar in terms of the style. The rest of the body is not. And you could maybe bring up the argument, okay, maybe it's like a half-finished piece, etc. The blending for the face and the hair and stuff looks really odd. As in the face is fully finished, highly rendered, and very smooth. And the hair looks kind of like very choppily drawn on top of the face. Same with the dragon in the back and then the like shadows down the arm, the swirls. The rendering quality and style don't match the previous pieces that I've showed you. The style looks close, but the rendering is not quite there. Those two pieces were posted as completed pieces. They weren't posted labeled like, oh, work in progress, you know? This one, again, the lines don't match at all the level of construction and rendering that everything else exhibits. Like, the arm isn't blended in over the couch. This is like a work in progress. This is not a completed piece. And then again, we have very thin line art and things are not inside the lines. Not saying they have to be. There is an art style and coloring outside of line work, but it's simply just not completed yet by any means. And here we have the final one. And this one was the one that made me feel like this feels a little odd because, and I'm trying to put it into words that kind of make sense to explain my artist intuition, right? We once again have the composition of the piece and the anatomy is done very, very well. It's a complex piece. You're looking at a very muscular character from the back and his head is turned over the shoulder. It's a more dynamic pose to draw and the camera angle is a little bit lower. The color choice is completely spot on with the face color, etc. The body color. We have underpainting, so there's like a glow on the underside of the hair. So the color choice is very advanced. The color theory is very advanced. The characters blended in very well with the background. But the actual rendering is very choppy. And by choppy, I mean that it really feels like this person doesn't know what they're doing. Because when you look at the rendering of the hair, they're just kind of applying random brushstrokes everywhere. Whereas again, this is the level of hair rendering that they're capable of doing, according to what they advertised. Or, you know, we have another blonde character, hair like this. Hair like this in the start, like the sketching phase, the flat color plus basic shading phase doesn't look like this. The hair is not following any shape at all. There is no direction to it. It's literally like they're applying lines. And if you are drawing really 3D looking hair like this, you would apply the shadows in very like sharp and dynamic shapes to build up the shape of the hair before you start applying highlights, whatever. But they're not even applying the shadows in the correct spots. Here we have a big swoop of the bang over the eye, and then the shadow they apply doesn't even line up with the bangs properly. Same thing for here. There's no shapes constructed within the hair. And the reason why I'm pointing that out is because there's a lot of shapes in this type of hair. There is a style in drawing hair just, you know, in like the very line type way, which is totally fine, but that's not what this person draws. And then we look at the shading and the highlights for the body, and we see kind of the same thing, where it looks like brushstrokes and stuff are again applied without knowing why they're applied. They're just kind of like scribbled on. So I just find it hard to believe that this type of rendering can somehow render out to look like this without some sort of AI assistance in the process. And other people on the internet also felt suspicious. Another user makes a post saying, I've been looking into her for a bit now and I wanted to gather things. Sorry to people who paid her, but she's 100% AI generating and tracing her works. This is her giveaway post from 2025, where these two images were offered as equal prizes. Obviously, for those who can't tell, the first is traced from AI, whereas the second is her real skill. Here we see the side by side. And this is what I was pointing out. On the right-hand side, we see, you know, a drawn piece that is more intermediate, whereas this on the left, which looks very obviously AI generated, looks much more fully rendered, fleshed out, polished. I'm not saying this and saying like AI is better, whatever, but we can clearly see there is a skill discrepancy between these two pieces. They add, these are her sketches in the time lapse she's posted. For people who can't tell, there's zero chance a person who can execute the pose in the finished work would draw a sketch like this. There is no anatomical knowledge and there is nothing right in the sketch. These are the sketches of a person that has no idea what human proportions are. So this is the final product. The sketch. If you're gonna try to fool people, at least try a little harder. The anatomy is completely off. And again, I'm not dogging on you if you got funky anatomy. If you're a beginner, you're trying to learn. I love beginner artists. We love beginner artists. We support beginner artists. We just don't support scammers. And this person is just straight up LARPing because what do you mean that sketch doesn't produce this? It just doesn't. Nothing lines up properly. The shoulder joint is dislocated. Also, the body is not symmetrical. Like the head, like the body is kind of like this, you know? I can't even replicate it. Like the neck is tilted out like that and they're doing this type of pose. And also, they've drawn so many characters in this like kind of cunty masculine pose like this. So if you've drawn so many like this should be a lot easier for you, right? If you're familiar with it. We can give grace to a pose that's much more complex that nobody really draws, like that Freeran head drawing. But this, Mind you, here's another sketch she's posted to her page. So how did you go from this to this? I know it's obviously not the same drawing, but you know what I mean, right? This sketch is anatomically correct. So how come this one is so far off? Here we have another one, which is closer, but her arms, where's her elbows? They talk about the VA stuff, but we already covered that one. They also add that's not all. She's a writer. I don't want to waste my money to try to check whether her writing is AI, but it's highly likely it is. So, okay, this one, I'm like really confused. So she has like a book series, and there are book series where you can change the reading order based on whatever you want, right? It's totally a vibe. But she's got like a bajillion books planned out, like 12 book order pacing variations. Now, again, some artists are absolute mega minds, so they can literally like plan out a book 10 books ahead. Some just wing it and go with the flow. Maybe they used AI, maybe they didn't use AI. I just find it odd that they have 10 different orderings for the way you could read their book, basically. Okay, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 8, no, 10. They have 10 different ways you can read the book, like 10 different orders where you could read like book 1, then book 2, then book 5, then book 4. I'm sorry, how can your book plot-wise make sense if there's that many options? I'm a reader, I read a lot of books, and there's some books where they're like, oh, read this book before this, like Throne of Glass, right? Some people say, oh, okay, like book 0, you can either read it in the pure order where you read book 0 first, then you go, or you read books 1, 2, 3, 0, 4, like that, and that it might make more sense. That is possible, right? Because book 0 is essentially a prologue. It gives all of her backstory, but it doesn't affect the rest of the plot for the book. It just gives you more context. It's a little bit slower to get into though, so some people suggest starting with book 1 so it starts faster. There's other books where you'll be like, oh, you read these 2 books like, 3 and 4 in tandem, aka simultaneously, and then the rest of it. You don't see book series with such massive variety in like the ordering that you read it, because how would the plot make sense? But OP continues, her perfect line art appears out of nowhere, and she doesn't lower opacity when lining, which is another tracing tell. The sketch is so bright you can barely see the black lines. It really indicates she doesn't even look at the sketch, but traces a hidden image beneath. Everybody's different, but I would find it impossible to do line art over a sketch this vibrantly purple. And again, they're not following the sketch at all. I've said this in other videos and people have harped on me for it, and I think it's fair, right? I didn't word it correctly. You're allowed to not follow a sketch if you want to not follow the sketch. That's totally fine. Some artists, when it comes to the line art, on a whim, they're like, I want to do this. Feel free to do that. It gets suspicious when you as an artist have 0 past history of doing work in this style, essentially, right? They have no art progression, so all their art starts out amazing out the gates. And then 2, the art rendering doesn't match up to the anatomy that they're advertising, right? Their art rendering, anatomy, and composition look really high, but their sketching looks mad chopped in terms of the anatomy. Also, in some other examples of their artwork, the rendering skill doesn't match up whatsoever to the final product of other art pieces they've shown. So then on top of that, when you have a speed paint where there is a really chopped sketch where the anatomy is totally off, and then the moment they do the line art, they one-shot everything perfectly, but it also doesn't line up with the sketch, right? Now in the line art, the eyes are all lower, the eyebrows are lower, the nose is lower, the mouth is all lower, and all in a completely different shape, almost as if they're tracing something that we can't see. That likely means they're probably tracing something we can't see. They also add, here are some speed paints that are especially egregious to me. It's crazy how she goes from drawing like she's never seen a human body before to a seasoned pro that can freehand perfect liner on top of bullshit. So this is this piece that I was talking about here, where it's the same freaking thing. Like, she does the most boxiest sketch ever, and then look at how she draws in the back muscles. What is that? That's not what the back muscles look like. It's because she's blocking out where the shadows go already, because she knows where the shadows belong. The anatomy is completely off as well. Immediately goes into a rough sketch, knowing where everything belongs. Now it looks more put together. The eyes are a little off though here. Also, what in the back muscles is going on here? Now look at the line art. On the first go, the line art is perfect. But on top of that, it matches nothing with the sketch. The eyes are not all in different spots again. The nose is all in different spots, almost as if she's tracing a hidden layer. You're totally allowed to draw differently than what your sketch layer showed. And just because an artist did that doesn't mean you should start pointing fingers accusing them of using AI. That, coupled with every other red flag that I've previously mentioned, is why this artist looks so suspicious. And this is why it's odd. It's because when you look at the artist and the way they're drawing, they have vastly different skills they're displaying. Their sketching skill is beginner, right? Beginner to intermediate. Their color theory skill is pro, but then their rendering is not quite there. Here we have another speed paint. This is the egregious one. Oh my god. Look at that. We have this, and then look at the way she does the line art. Or like the basic sketch. Again, nothing lines up. All of a sudden, the body somehow shifts over, but the head stays in the same place. Like she's drawing a more refined sketch over nothing. It's almost as if the first sketch doesn't mean anything, because she's not referring to the first sketch at all. And then we do the line art, and the liner is also referencing something else. Because look, the hands are all shifted over. We're no longer following the sketch. The point that I'm trying to make is there's like no point doing a sketch if you're literally going to ignore it. You know what I mean? And then now all of a sudden the composition is perfect. You truly want me to believe you went from this to this? And yeah, here OP points out some close-ups where you can see it looks so off. So Ayla then went on Threads and made their rebuttal, basically breaking down OP's point by point. First up, about the raffle, right? They say that those two pieces were not equal pricing. The first one was supposed to be a fully rendered half body. The second was supposed to be a sketch. About why the sketches look chopped, which to me, I'm the most curious about this answer, right? She says, "This is the funniest part because I always say my first sketches need to be exercised. The first sketch usually takes me 1 minute, maybe 5 max. It's there for composition only, not for anatomy. After this sketch, I start working on the real one. So to say that's why I ignore it most of the time and only use it as a guideline." Even if you do like a 1 minute sketch, you're going to exhibit the anatomical knowledge that you have. So if your knowledge of anatomy is extremely high to what you are advertising in your works, like this level of anatomy, if you're doing a blocking for a composition for even for 1 minute, it would still look anatomically correct because that is the level of anatomy you have. I don't think it's possible for you to do a basic blocking sketch, have the anatomy look like that of somebody with scoliosis. Totally chill if you have that. And then all of a sudden turn around and do a refined sketch where the anatomy is absolutely perfect. I just don't believe that. I'm just gonna pull up a sketch from an artist I really like as an example. This artist is called Zeronis. They did a lot of art and Star Guardian stuff for League of Legends. This is a really quick sketch they have on their page. This was from 2024. And they're just like raw dogging it out the gate, like no basic blocking, whatever, because they've probably done so much art that they don't even need to do that anymore. Take a look at this. At this point in the sketch, they've probably at max been at it for like 5 minutes. The anatomy is all right. The anatomy is all correct. Of course, they're resizing here and there. You know, there's things they're going to change later. But it is almost perfectly correct because their art anatomy level is up here because they've done so much freaking artwork. They're a professional. It makes sense. Just another one of their pieces off their page because, again, I love their artwork. Here they're doing a couple of sketches for some different poses. Again, are these sketches? Yeah. Is the anatomy correct in these? Yeah, because this person draws a lot, so they have a lot of experience doing it. I'm showing their artwork just as an example because I don't believe this at all. I don't believe that you do a 1 minute sketch and have the anatomy of a beginner artist, but then do like a cleaned up sketch and all of a sudden you have the anatomy of a god. But they continue about the voice acting thing, again, highlighting the male voice actor asked to be anonymous. But again, we've already like debunked that one. About writing, they again highlight they have a dozen drafts for books that they've released. You know, the story isn't planned for 12 books. They already wrote 11.5 books and as a continuous story. And they highlight that their books are already on Kindle Unlimited. So maybe it's AI generated, maybe it isn't, right? So about the speed paints, they highlight the first speed paint is the second installment of the personal challenge to draw the best painting they can in 1 hour, recreating another painting they made previously. 80% of the time was used to polish the sketch as they already had the entire composition laid out in a previous drawing and that they have ADHD. Same. Sometimes they can dish out an entire color sketch within an hour. Other times it takes them 3 hours to draw a single hand. That's fair. If you have ADHD, sometimes, you know, if you're not motivated to do something, somebody could pull all your teeth and you still won't do it. They add, I keep redrawing until it feels right. Sometimes it feels right after the second sketch. Other times I have to redraw until my eyes bleed. There are still things to me that aren't fully explained away here, but let's continue. Because The original OP who made that other post that we saw made a rebuttal, adding, for people who aren't artists, she's betting on you not being educated about how art works. She manipulates what's written by me, and her responses don't actually address my claims. She's using your lack of money in a field as a money source. Talking about, oh, you cropped off the fact that the second image was the sketch you're supposed to win from the raffle. OP says that wasn't actually the point. The claim is that one piece has a perfect head and the other one has a mangled head. And they say the person who drew the image on the left won't draw the image on the right. This is the thing that I'm trying to say again, right? Which I agree with OP. Ayla is trying to claim, oh, well, one is just a more refined version, and I spent 100 hours on this one, which is why it looks so good. Even if you had a drawing that you only spent 1 hour on, you would still exhibit the skill level that you're supposed to have. So if you are a professional, like I just showed you with that other artist, right, that worked for Riot Games, did a lot of League art, you're gonna have the professional anatomy level. You're gonna have the professional color theory level, even if you only drew for like 30 seconds and did a quick sketch. It wouldn't look like somebody else drew it. And OP says, yes, right? It isn't because the sketches are messy or ugly. It's that they lack any kind of understanding of anatomy. Her guidelines are of a beginner that has never drawn a body by themselves. OP adds a couple of examples from an artist on YouTube who does quick studies of poses versus their art. And about the voice actor, OP says, my theory has always been that it's an AI filter on her own recording. And about the books being on Kindle Unlimited, OP says, yo, I'm not giving you Kindle Unlimited page reads, and I don't have writing experience, but sure on 2 out of the 3 using AI. So I'll be careful about the third, the 2 being the art and the voice acting. Again, we know the male voice actor is a real person. Whether their voice acting was run through AI for some sort of modification that Ayla then posted, we don't know. I do agree on the suspicion about the writing, and I don't believe that it's possible to have a 12-book series where you could make 10 different variations of stories. Nightlight Shifter, Daylight Fae, Werewolf, by changing the order 10 different times without completely losing the plot. They add the ADHD, the time, and the redraws are all irrelevant. What I'm pointing out in the video is the same thing. Mangled, anatomically beginner sketches with perfect anatomy, correct line art appearing on top. And they highlight, more importantly, she hasn't provided a single defense in her art or the voice acting case, because she's not looking to defend herself from artists. She's looking to manipulate authors that don't know what art processes look like. Now, after this, Ayla starts dropping some examples of their artwork, some actual full speed paints. Before I get in, I just want to add, we're gonna hear a lot of excuses. So Ayla says, finally, I've been trying to set everything up to record today, but technology hates me. Here's the OBS display recordings of my processes. Sketches 3 and 4 will probably interest people the most, so that's where I jump from what the F am I drawing to, oh, it looks like something. I'll upload hand POVs tomorrow because I need a computer to compress them, blah, blah, blah. Now let's look at the excuses. It's 1 a.m. here. The first thing I ate today was 2 eggs a couple of hours ago. There's things happening in my life that I can't really share. Just know that instead of finding a safe place to stay, my neighbors are extremely shady people. I've been trying my best to compile proof to clear my name. Why? Because my stories, my art, they mean the world to me. There's also the issue that people who commission me might be affected, which I'm infinitely sorry for. Despite the fact that it's past midnight, I'll try to set up a quick live writing session with a few of my friends. I'll record that and share it in the same folder, be it today or tomorrow. I'll also upload the voice acting stuff, etc. P.S. My drawing process was significantly slowed down by the hand POV. Because of the camera positioning, I couldn't set my feet on the table. Drawing tablet on my lap, it was forced to stay straight in my shitty chair with no back support. Got some excuses. So we see the first 2 sketches, and they draw in Clip Studio Paint. They have a reference image open, and they're doing some basic sketching on the side. One thing I kind of noticed with the sketching is that they do short, feathery strokes. No shade, no tea if this is the way you like to draw. This is also something that you will kind of see with more intermediate beginner artists, more like feathery strokes, almost as if they're not confident in placing down lines. There are also people with a lot of experience that like drawing this way. Everybody's got their own drawing preference, but I'm just pointing it out. It is something you tend to see more commonly with people who are newer to art. What I also find interesting here is they don't do any sort of body blocking, essentially. They kind of go straight into the rough sketch. And again, there's people who draw without body blocking. I just showed you an artist who is completely legitimate who does draw like that. One thing that I find odd is when people have AI accusations and suddenly they whip up more proof or speed paint proof or whatever, and now their drawing process changes. Another example, artist that I've covered who would jump from like doing basic sketching to suddenly doing grayscale blocking, and then they don't do the grayscale blocking anymore. you're allowed to change the way you want to draw. Maybe you want to try grayscale, you realize it's not for you, you change it up. Conveniently, these people with AI accusations also tend to suddenly swap art styles and art processes. So now this is what people started pointing out. She gets into like drawing the hand holding a knife, and the hand is completely chopped. Anatomy all off. And again, that's totally fine, man. Hand anatomy is really hard, especially when it comes to drawing more complex poses. You know, you got to get some reference pictures, stuff like that. The thing I'm trying to point out, and again, not harping on the skill level, it's totally fine to be a beginner artist. That is something that we value. We need more beginner artists. We need newer artists, you know, learning to do art. Art is a beautiful thing, and nobody should be making fun of you for your skill level. The reason I'm talking about it here is because this person is advertising themselves to be an art professional and taking commissions. So that's why we now need to scrutinize the artwork, because the level that we're seeing in the final product is not matching what we're seeing here in the sketching process. So here again, they're doing like a cleaner sketch that's featuring more of the same like shaky, small, feathery brush strokes. So then we get here, where they whip up a reference photo of them, or somebody, maybe it's not them, right? Holding like a switchblade, and they're sketching that in. Or once again, the anatomy level and the art skill level just, to me, doesn't match what their final product of other pieces they've shown is. Again, let me remind you, this is what they're advertising. This is another art piece that they're advertising that they drew themselves. The knife anatomy is also wrong, because the way they're holding the switchblade, which, like, unfortunate, maybe it's not the best reference, right? They're holding the switchblade kind of in towards their chest like this, but the way they drew the knife, they're drawing it as if the knife is like parallel to their body. But from that hand position, it would be really awkward to hold that. It would be more so pointing inwards like this, then the hand would need to be further out. They continue the sketching process, and this is essentially what they leave it as. Where again, the hand anatomy is all off. This middle finger, it's like much thicker than the rest of the fingers. So here we have another piece where they grab like a pre-drawn palette, they use some cloud brushes and paint a background, and that's kind of it. So they just made a gradient and used a tree brush and stamped in trees. So let's take a look at sketch 3. This is where they claim, you know, hey, take a look at sketch 3 and 4. You'll notice like I start figuring things out here. So, okay, I don't know why they do this, but they take the sketch and then they just start drawing line art, like, or a more clean version of the sketch absolutely nowhere near their sketch. I don't know why they do this. My theory is because the original person that called them out, not Bookish Referrals, but the other person, because they were like, yo, the line art is not lining up with the sketch at all. It's all in a different spot. It looks like they're drawing as if they know where things belong. Maybe this is why they're faking it like this, where suddenly they're doing the line art now in a different spot than the sketch to prove this is how they normally draw. They then flip through some reference photos. And again, we have the sketch where the anatomy is a bit off. And I hope you guys don't get too tired of me saying that, okay? Again, if you have wonky anatomy, that's totally fair and that's totally valid. We love wonky anatomy. It's funny. I've got many pieces with wonky anatomy, okay? That's all chill. It's just this is not what this person is advertising, and this speed paint sketch thing is further proving the fact that it's not their skill level. Or more so, this is their skill level, which is completely fine and valid, not this. So they whip up the reference photo for the hand again, and we got a real wonky finger here. Real wonky. That's totally fine. Hands are really hard to draw. Like, they're double, tripling, quadrupling down on proving their drawing process by being like, oh, well, I'm gonna draw it a little bit above my sketch because, like, that's what they got mad at me for. So I'm gonna show this is my actual art process. Sorry, I just find this really laughable. They're trying so hard to prove that they draw like this. And this is the comical part to me, because if you spent all this fucking effort making this fake speed paint, well, legit speed paint, right? But like, you know what I mean? You could have just learned how to draw. You could have just whipped up a YouTube tutorial from some YouTube art goat and then sat down and did a 20-minute study. That would have helped you a lot, you know? So here we have sketch 4, where they then turn that cleaned up sketch into their new sketch, and now they line over that. And again, according to them, this is where they figured things out. This, again, to me is fake because it's not their actual drawing process. We saw their other speed paints. They do a shape body blocking, and then they go into a rough sketch, suddenly drawing things in a very different spot, and then they go into line art, and the line art is perfect. They do like 3 steps like that. This is now our, what, 3rd, 4th sketch that we're seeing? Once again, drawing the eyes in a completely different spot. Also, there's a whole other thing that's already been proven, like AR tracing, where you can, even if you are recording, you know, use AR tracing to go and trace something that we can't visibly see. But now they start drawing. But now how did your anatomy get so much better? Look at the face, look at the hands, look at the knife now. How did your anatomy get so much better between sketches 3 and 4? Again, you will sketch at your level. So if your anatomy level is that of a beginner, your sketch will look like a beginner. If your anatomy level is that of an intermediate, it will look like intermediate. And it's completely fine no matter what points in the stages of the art process you're at. But you don't jump from one sketch to another. You don't jump from sketch 3 looking like a beginner to sketch 4 and suddenly you look like an advanced artist. That just isn't possible unless you're scamming in some way, shape, or form. They also offer, again, this is the hand cam for sketch 4 to, I guess, prove they're not tracing anything. We don't see their hand though, but it shows the screen, although the time in the corner is also cropped out. A lot of other people also didn't believe all the speed paints that we saw. And another user writes, the jump between what am I drawing to it looks like something isn't having a line art, a very unsure one, especially for a person with shown finished results like what we've seen, in a random place on top of a completely non-existent anatomy and structure. To be honest, I hate dealing with this. I hope whomever needs to hear actual artists will hear them out on these questions, because this whole thing is so weird and manipulative. As soon as you have some understanding of how art is made, the level of understanding here does not equal the level of how things turn out at the end. The reference is right here. What are we even doing? And here we can see the side by side. And they add, like, it's totally how you shoot a bow. And if somebody's shooting a bow, but their hand is turned inwards, look, when I shot archery, okay, I competed for 7 years. You don't shoot a bow like that. You shoot a bow this way. Shoot a bow this way. People muck up bows all the time, and it's always really, really funny. It's totally fine if you never shot a bow. You're not gonna know how it works. And a commenter says, the fact that she not only had 5 sketches, which were always marginally different from the previous one, the fact they always floated a good inch above, and the chicken scratch, the weird layer structure, while not even using all the different folders on top of all of that, the fact that the references they had on screen almost never had anything to do with what they're drawing, except for the hands maybe, just makes it so obvious. And the original OP says this, she has the hand reference open and does like 5 sketches as she looks like the reference, but the hand is still completely broken until it magically improves at the end. Her process is just unrealistic, and the voice acting clip still sounds like somebody's voice put through an AI change filter. And OBS lets you put in an invisible overlay, which was done by another AI tracer before. I find it really funny when people like link YouTube videos and I'm like, ooh, let me go click it. It's just me. I get jump scared every time. Yeah, I also want to add again in this video, I was also talking about the sketch where they're like moving everything over marginally. Again, as an artist, you can draw whatever way you want, okay? You're valid in your methods. As long as it works for you, you don't have to explain it to other people. This is the situation again where we have somebody with a lot of massive red flags already, where they're exhibiting a sketching level that doesn't match the skill level they're advertising in their final product. So it gets even more suspicious in this specific context when we see them sketching and the sketches look very basic and amateurish, which is fine. And then suddenly they do very precise, very specific sketching where everything is shifted up like half an inch. Because why? It's gonna make it look like you're tracing something we can't see that just happens to be a little bit higher than your sketch layer. Because again, there can be legitimate artists that draw like this. Sometimes, again, it completely fair. It will happen. You're doing your line art and you're like, oop, that one eyeball is a little low, and you just draw it a little bit higher and you call it a day. That happens. And then alongside every single other red flag we've already talked about, it makes this person's art process look like a massive glaring lighthouse beacon being like, wee, something's wrong here. And OP continues, I appreciate her taking her time to do this as she sounds like a sweet person in her recording, which I'm sure was hard to put together. But her sketching skill in the screen recording, both anatomy and line confidence wise, doesn't match the end result. They reference points I had made in that video about helicopter food. Echoing Sonny, this is exhausting to deal with because it's blatant to any artist, and I've tried explaining as many times as I could, but I can't transfer my knowledge to people's brains. I feel the same way. When I was talking about the sketches being moved, I know it's on me. I didn't word it well. I hope you got my point, because like, it's fine if you like you sketch an eyeball and you doing the line art, you're like, oh, gotta move it up a little bit. That's chill. It's that in context with everything else. If you know, and it looks like they're tracing something. If somebody has a speed paint and they're not exactly following their sketch, don't go obviously point fingers and start slinging accusations. That's not cool, because people, change it all the time. This is in context to every single other glaring red flag this person already has. But OP says, I'm not convinced, and I'll see if any artists have a different opinion. Other artists were like, yo, I feel that somebody who makes such complex compositions would have more confidence in their line work. And one thing I noticed was she already had folders ready, which I agree, because there's like a bajillion folders in her Clip Studio Paint. Starting from the beginning of the sketch was made in a folder called Sketch as an object layer on top of an already completed art piece. So, why aren't we working in like a brand new canvas? Maybe there's a reason why we're working on an already completed art canvas, but that's odd. It's like potentially I was thinking maybe it's due to the fact that they had this other window open. I use Clip Studio Paint. This is a feature called Subview. I almost never use it. You can open like full on working Clip Studio Paint files in it. So I opened this like Riftbound card that I made for my boyfriend that I need to print of our cats, but it doesn't open the layers in the layer window. It just, you can zoom in and out or whatever on it. But your working canvas is still this one. I don't know how they got to those layers there. Another person says, if you watch Ayla's video, you can tell her shaky scratches are neither anatomically correct or at the level of an artist who can render that good. Basically, everything we've already pointed out. So then Ayla goes on a big old rant. A huge rant, actually. And she got ratioed really badly here, where she says, I don't want to mention this, but F it. I'm sorry my strokes aren't confident enough. Maybe it's the fact that I had a heat stroke yesterday while searching for a new place to move because my neighbors are allegedly substance and activity traffickers. And they mentioned, I have video proof, but I'm too scared to go to the police because I'm an immigrant in a corrupt country. They were shouting this stuff, and because of the echo around my apartment complex, I could hear everything. Maybe it's because the neighbors party and shout through the night, and I have to choose between being able to breathe in a heat wave or cooking myself alive in my apartment that doesn't have AC. I still hear them. Yes, I confronted them before finding out what they do. Perhaps it's because I couldn't sleep the past few weeks more than 5 hours a night. Could it be because this was my last day my landlady allowed me to find another place to rent, or I need to sign a contract for a year? Perhaps because I had to sit stiff on my broken chair to record a hand POV because I couldn't sit in my normal position, leaning back, feet on desk, or else I knocked the phone? Who knows? Perhaps it's because my tablet is so scratched that it feels like I'm dragging my nails across a blackboard with each stroke, and rogue pieces of it derail my pen, so I have to work with small strokes. Maybe it's because I'm permanently on the verge of a panic attack from all this accumulated stress. Did I mention I could barely keep down 2 eggs today, or that it's currently past 5 a.m. and I'm too scared to fall asleep because I know I'll have sleep paralysis again? I could go on. This isn't even half of it. But then again, who cares? If that is true, I am sorry. That sucks. All of this is an awful situation. That being said, though, I always think it's very interesting. And maybe I sound kind of cold saying this, but a lot of times, most times, when people who do AI scamming get cornered into providing proof or evidence of the fact that they are not a scammer, instead of resorting to providing proof that they're not a scammer, this person did provide proof. It just wasn't substantial proof, right? They play the emotional card. Like, I am going through so much trouble, so therefore you should feel bad for me and stop questioning my actions. Two things can be true. You can be going through a shitty situation and it sucks. But the other thing can be true, which is your proof didn't actually prove anything. It didn't clear the accusation about this being artwork that you claim you can draw, and this being your sketching process, which is not matching anything that you're advertising. They also attach a photo of their drawing tablet, and a lot of people in the comments were very shocked at what this person was saying, essentially, because they were saying, yo, it's too much work for you to report the, CSA that's happening with your neighbors, but you can go make a whole bunch of time-lapse videos to prove that you're not tracing AI. And other people were like, wait, so bad things are happening to kids in your neighborhood, but you're using it as a defense for why your art speed paints are lackluster. And another user says, your manipulation tactics are working. You're tricking a bunch of empathetic and warm-hearted people to pity you because of your AI use. Shame on all of you who are comfortable babying somebody who avoided the responsibility of helping kids out of fear and would rather hop online to scam you and hundreds of others with their dishonesty. At one point, do any of you say enough is enough? The wolf is in sheep's clothing, barely disguised, and you're dancing around it like it won't kill you. And this is the thing, right? Because they're playing on your emotions and they're spinning this massive sob story, they create a safety blanket around them. So now if you try to go and call out their bad behavior because they're providing unsubstantiated proof, right? From what I have seen so far, I believe that they're scamming and that they are tracing over generative AI works and passing it off as theirs for commissions and other works. They have not provided enough proof to this point to prove otherwise. But because they have played such a big emotional card, you can't call them out. Otherwise, they're going to turn around and call you a big meanie. They're going to call you an asshole and a bully for kicking them when they're down. That is how these manipulators get away with doing these things. Because if they can't win the argument by truth, they will win the argument by playing the victim card. And in situations like this, you can't win. Because if you try to provide proof, they will call you a meanie. So the other option is you fall for their manipulation and you feel bad for them, which is exactly what they want so that they can get away with their behavior. This is always just something to keep in mind because you might have people in your life that do this, right? Where every time they're called out for something bad, they never actually explain the behavior or apologize or provide any sort of substantial truth to what is going on, but instead they always pull the "woe is me" card. And everybody was harping on this, being like, what the hell? After people were like, dude, how dare you go on the internet and talk about this and not actually help the kids? They had made a pin post being like, oh, I contacted the police, blah, 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 blah. And another user responds, I've been watching the situation unfold, and this behavior reminds me of a few manipulative people I've met. It reminds me of them. Every reason she listed feels like a call for pity and an excuse instead of addressing the feedback properly. The tone feels quite aggressive, but I'll give the benefit of the doubt, as I don't know how I would handle that type of stress. And I feel like the tone, long list of reasons and nothing being addressed reminds me of cheaters being caught. And honestly, I don't know if it's right to analyze behavior reactions from text like that, but it really gives manipulative vibes. And I agree. And also, maybe I'm too cold hearted, but I don't believe that all of what she said is real. Just because it's reading a little too convenient timing suspicious to me with a massive shock value of all the stuff with the kids. So after that, because she was getting a lot of flack for what she said, Ayla comes out with this. I uploaded a few more files to the proof folder. But first of all, I want to apologize for my outburst from yesterday. Although it's no excuse, I felt backed into a corner where my life was and still is falling apart, and my mind is crumbling to delirium from a lack of sleep and rest. The good news is that an investigation has been launched, and I can provide proof, except it would dox my location. I've called police and stuff like that. I'll take a decision as to whether I should dox my location or not. Now for proof, I will compile more proof on a clearer mind, but today I redrew the sketch, the file with sketch 6. The difference between this sketch and the previous ones, I was able to sleep for a few hours, although it was far too little and too shallow. I'm sitting in a position I draw 99% of the time, leaning back so my spine has support, feet on desk, tablet on lap. Note that I was still unable to eat and I might have to visit a doctor tomorrow if my situation doesn't improve soon. Usually I work faster and don't need 6 sketches to reach a decent result. Also, yes, those are sketches, not line art. I loathe line art and don't even offer as an option for my commissions. I'll talk more about my commissions later when I compile proper proof. I also uploaded, stuff about the voice recording, blah, 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 blah. And they add, I'll allow myself a few days to hopefully recover, then record more proof. I'll probably use another Gmail account or I'll compress, then re-upload some videos I already uploaded. Just know that I'm disappointed with myself about the rant. At the moment, I was going delirious. I should have put my phone aside for a few days to gather proper proof, but I was scared that my silence would be perceived as an admission of guilt. I also didn't want more people to suffer. I refunded all my clients. I don't expect to receive any payment after I clear my name, and that's up to clients. I am incredibly sorry that so many people have been impacted. This is one of the main reasons I rushed to provide proof. At the time, it's like a damned if you do, damned if you don't. My options were stay silent and allow it to snowball, 2, ask for a period to settle my IRL issues and then provide proof, but I'm sure everyone would say I'm stalling, or 3, rush to provide a semblance of truth. And as you can see, every option would result in a disaster. I can empathize with the fact that it can feel frustrating if everything is true, right? And you're in a situation where your IRL life is crumbling, and then also all this accusation is being slung at you, whether rightful or not, and you feel like you need to clear your name. It feels like there's too much on your plate. That, if it is all true, we can agree with. But the way that I read this is again a lot of excuses. I don't know. Maybe because of the people that I've dealt with in my life. When I hear this, I'm just like, oh God. Like, it's still a lot of excuses, right? They're talking about how their life is falling apart, how they're crumbling from delirium, how they getting no sleep, how they can't even eat, how they have to go to the doctor, how they had to call the cops. Like, it's a lot of unnecessary info, in my personal opinion. And sure, your IRL situation and stuff can add context to situations. You already explained that. We already know your IRL situation is falling apart. So now wouldn't the next step be, let's take a little bit of a break and then upload what, according to you, is a good speed paint when you're of sound mind in a safe location and fed and have slept? I don't know. Everyone, again, handles stress differently, so to me, this still reads manipulative. So then they upload a 6th sketch, where what I find interesting for this sketch is the fact that they still have, background, all these other layers. They're working in a new folder now. All these other layers are now toggled off. They were toggled on in the other sketches that we saw. But one thing I also find interesting is, again, like what they had said earlier in their post, I loathe line art, da 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 da. Like, it's kind of as if they're already preemptively smelling the things that people are going to say. So then they're creating an alibi for themselves, pre-existing one. So if people come out and say, oh, well, like, your line art looks really choppy, well, they're just going to pull up the, but I told you that I hate line art, So it's just a bit interesting to me. So this is the final line art they produce. But again, one thing I want you to note is just the anatomy level of the line art that we see here versus the first sketch that we saw. Vastly different. It really looks like 2 different people drew it. And in the comments of their post, people were like, girl, stay safe, don't dox yourself, you never know who you're reading, blah, 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 blah. I fear it's just people falling for this person's manipulation. And again, maybe I sound really cold-hearted here, but I've had people like this in my life, and I'm just smelling it from a mile away, and I'm like, "Oh my god, not again. The trauma's coming back," you know? And they respond, "Honestly, my safety is already out the window." Like, it's giving the vibes. Like, I feel like everyone in high school knew this one, like, attention-seeking kid. And there are people who, again, I'm not trying to discredit people who need help. If you need help, please reach out to a friend, whatever. But there'll be somebody who says, like, no one wants me anyways. Nobody cares. Nobody. But there's people who, like, legitimately mean it. And there's people who do it for attention. And then, they want everyone to say, like, no, we care about you. We love you. Da, da, da. It's kind of given that. Somebody in the comments also offered to connect with them to do a live draw. They agreed to DM them, but we haven't seen a post about that. So whether it happened or not, who knows? So then they add another thing into their folder, a traditional painting of a person they drew in 2019. They again have a lot of excuses. I didn't want to post it because it was supposed to be a test. This was the first time I did it since 2019. Since then, I only painted a few landscape and stuff in traditional mediums. It's no masterpiece. It's not shaded yet. I was hoping to color it with pencils. Blah, 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 blah. Then they add the photo. Once again, it was supposed to be a test. I drew it at midnight. I drew it only within an hour. The lighting in the room is horrendous. The camera fell because I don't own a tripod. My health has taken a nosedive. My body is shutting down from the stress. I was planning to record another process. And for people asking why there's pauses, because I had to use the bathroom. Next time, I'll leave in the bits of me puking the little water I can barely force myself to drink. And as I mentioned before, the 6th sketch was done after a tiny bit of rest the next day, and I was in my usual, more comfortable position. Tomorrow, since it's 5 a.m. already, I'll tidy up the previous folder so I can find the other hand POVs. Also, I'm attaching a video of my tablet. And at some point, I'm not even putting any pressure on the tip, just holding it by the end and lightly passing it across the surface so you can hear how it scratches and deviates the pen. I'm gonna lose it. I try to keep it together for my videos. I truly try to keep it like, put together, deliver you the information. I can see how this person is a writer because they are crafting the most outlandish stories of excuses over and over and over and over again. They're farming more sympathy from empathetic people. Posting a screenshot again with a ton of excuses as to why it might not live up to people's expectations, why it might be a little bit lackluster, how they're suffering, how they're so ill, how they can't sleep, how they can't keep water down. If it is true that you're truly suffering this much, I again am sorry for you, but truly please get off the internet and go see a doctor or something, man. Because if your health is truly this big of a concern, you're spending an awfully long amount of time talking about it on the internet rather than actually seeking help. And again, please don't put words in my mouth. I am not trying to discredit disabled artists, chronically ill artists, not like this. I just think this person is manipulating people. And again, this is what happens with manipulators. They hide behind a massive, massive, massive cloak of feel bad for me. So you feel like you can't call them out because now you look like a dick. Because now it's going to look like I'm bullying somebody that's ill, right? But I'm going to be honest. The whole point about people who use this type of manipulative language is that they use it to distract you from the true point at hand. And the true point at hand is that you're fucking offering art like this, claiming that you drew stuff like this, claiming you drew this, claiming you drew this when you draw like this. And this looks cute and this is perfectly fine. It's not this though. And that's how they get you. So we have one POV of the traditional sketch from the side. So we have them drawing the sketch from the side. Probably because, they don't have anything to like a tripod or something. So yeah, we do get the side POV. Maybe they didn't realize, right? Because truly, if you've never recorded a speed paint before, it might not occur to you. But they put it on the side their hand blocks because it's on the side of their dominant hand. But I digress, right? I do think that this is legitimately drawn. I'm just pointing out that I think it's funny. And yeah, they do have points like here. Let me back it up. Where they show it to the canvas so you can actually see the progress, right? Look, at the end of the day, the debate was not can Ayla draw? Because the answer is yes, they definitely can draw. But the question of did they draw this without AI assistance, as in painting over AI or tracing AI in some way? And I think the answer is still no. And they quote retweeted that traditional piece actually, writing, funny how the moment I show some irrefutable proof, even if it's imperfect, since once again, it was supposed to be a test video, it's suddenly crickets. I'll try to record more today if my body allows it. Maybe if I can showcase that I can obtain similar results in a traditional medium as I do digital, it will be proof enough. Keep in mind that I'm rusty. The 1 hour sketch attached was the first person I drew in a traditional medium since 2019 to 2020. The last time I painted traditionally was almost 3 years ago. Still, I'll push through my health issues and try my best to showcase my skills. Impossible task. Can you have an explanation of your artwork without any excuse in it? Impossible task. Just wondering, Not everyone can do it, Maybe you're one of those people that needs an excuse at every single speed paint you ever post. But just wondering. And a commenter says it's crickets because not only did you disprove absolutely nothing, nor did you do anything half decent, it's likely crickets because after a sob story full of weird twists and turns that nobody asked for, people are tired of you and the spectacle this has become. So at the end of the day, I'm curious about your thoughts, guys, but you already know my thoughts. I've tossed in my 2 cents in here. I try to present the information as straightforward as possible, but I started losing it after reading like the 10,000th excuse as to why they can't draw / their neighbors are absolutely violent evil slash they can't drink water slash they really have to pee real bad in the middle of their art pieces slash why this, that, and the third, and the compression of their stuff. Come on, man. Come on. Please just post proof that you can draw at this level. Full proof. So we see the sketch with this level of anatomy. We see the line art with this level of anatomy. And then we see the coloring and the rendering process to this level of completion. I just want to see it because we haven't seen it yet. We have seen that this artist can draw. That is a true statement. But did they draw this without any sort of AI assistance? I still believe, like I said, the answer is no. So with that, I'm curious about your thoughts. And again, don't send hate to any parties involved. Don't bully people. That's not cool. That's not what we're about. So with that, if you like this video, I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Don't forget to check me out on Etsy. I have digital art there for streamers and creators. I also have a coffee with free resources like a free sponsorship guide. And I stream on Twitch 3 days a week, Mondays and Saturdays at 6 p.m. PST and Thursdays at 7:30 p.m. PST. I'm working on my merch launch. It's got some cute cat stuff coming. A little bit delayed because my grandma got very ill. So it might be towards like the later half of July, but I'm really excited. I hope you guys are excited too. But yeah, so I hope to catch you guys at my streams or in another video. Peace.